everyone, and welcome. You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Philip Toledo, coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia. It's October 7, 2020 in the Philippines, but it's still evening of October 6 here in the U.S. And tonight, as always, we have updates from several of our correspondents across North America. Kathleen Gregorio in Mexico reports about tourists taking shelter as Hurricane Delta targets Cancun en route to the U.S. Gulf Coast. Then we'll head to Alexandria, Virginia with E.J. Gonzalez.
Mailboxes burglarized in several Virginia post offices.
Then Carlo Valdez in Union Township reports 4 people killed in a fire at a New Jersey furniture store. Then we'll head and speak with Lovely Anderson in Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth students return to school and adapt to the new normal post-COVID.
Julian Fiesta in Delano, California.
Suspect arrested for LA Sheriff's deputies ambush shooting in Compton.
Then Macy Membrere in Sacramento reports about the California wildfires now burning more than 4 million acres, and Governor Newsom cautioning Californians as counties begin to open. Then we'll head to New York with Joyanne Andres in Uniondale.
Cuomo outlines cluster action initiative to address New York hotspot zones.
Plus, for business news, Bobby Soriano in New York reports about Fed Chairman Jerome Powell calling on Congress for fiscal support. Beyond Meat expanding to the UK with a McDonald's partnership, and Instagram celebrating its 10th anniversary. Our coverage begins now with a look at the COVID-19 situation worldwide. According to the Coronavirus Resource Center of Johns Hopkins University in Medicine, as of 6 p.m. Eastern Time Tuesday, October 6, 2020, the number of COVID-19 cases reported worldwide is now more than 35,600,000. The countries with the top 3 most recorded cases are the U.S., India, and Brazil, with 7.4, 6.6, and 4.9 million, respectively. Sadly, this virus has now claimed more than 1,046,000 lives worldwide. The 3 countries with the most COVID-19 related deaths are the same: the U.S., Brazil, and India, with 210, 146, and 103,000 deaths, respectively. The World Trade Organization says global trade, which has been devastated by the coronavirus crisis, will shrink by less than expected this year, but the rebound will also be much weaker than previously forecast. Let's take a look.
The WTO is now projecting a 9.2% fall in the volume of world merchandise trade in 2020, followed by a 7.2% rise in 2021, leaving trade well below its pre-pandemic trend.
The global merchandise trade decline recorded in the second quarter of 14.3% is the largest quarter-on-quarter drop recorded in our time series going back to 2005. So this was a very sharp decline in trade.
We think there's reason for optimism on the trade front with a smaller than expected decline. Fall and winter holds a lot of uncertainty. Asian exports have been strong, but for those exports to be sustained, you need strong demand in the importing countries such as the U.S. and EU. But we don't know how strong consumption demand will remain should the virus resurge and should governments not be able to continue sustained fiscal support.
Meanwhile, President Donald Trump, shortly after leaving the hospital Monday following his COVID-19 treatment, called on Americans to get out there, but to be careful of the virus that has killed more than 200,000 in the United States alone. Let's see what he had to say.
I just left Walter Reed Medical Center, and it's really something very special. The doctors, the nurses, the first responders, and I learned so much about coronavirus. And one thing that's for certain, don't let it dominate you. Don't be afraid of it. You're going to beat it. We have the best medical equipment. We have the best medicines, all developed recently. And you're going to beat it. I didn't feel so good And 2 days ago, I could have left 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I felt great, like better than I have in a long time. I said just recently, better than 20 years ago. Don't let it dominate. Don't let it take over your lives. Don't let that happen. We have the greatest country in the world. We're going back. We're going back to work. We're going to be out front. As your leader, I had to do that. I knew there's danger to it, but I had to do it. I stood out front. I led. Nobody that's a leader would not do what I did. And I know there's a risk, there's a danger, but that's okay. And now I'm better, and maybe I'm immune. I don't know. But don't let it dominate your lives. Get out there. Be careful. We have the best medicines in the world, and they'll all happen very shortly, and they're all getting approved, and the vaccines are coming momentarily. Thank you very much. And Walter Reed, what a group of people. Thank you very much.
In other news, a defense official said Tuesday General Mark Milley, chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, tested negative for COVID-19, but is still self-quarantining after contact with an infected Coast Guard officer. The official, who requested anonymity, said the chairman, the vice chairman, and all the service chiefs tested negative. The Pentagon said a number of senior U.S. military officers were self-quarantining after meetings last week with the Coast Guard's Vice Commandant Admiral Charles Ray. Pentagon spokesman Jonathan Hoffman said they are aware that Vice Commandant Ray has tested positive for COVID-19 and that he was at the Pentagon last week for meetings with other senior military leaders and that some meeting attendees included other service chiefs. Hoffman said, quote, out of an abundance of caution, all potential close contacts from these meetings are self-quarantining. No Pentagon contacts have exhibited symptoms, and we have no additional positive tests to report at this time. The Coast Guard said Ray had tested positive on Monday after experiencing mild symptoms and was quarantining at home. Hoffman stressed that there has been no change to the operational readiness or mission capability of the U.S. Armed Forces. Now, when we come back, we'll have updates from our Eagle News correspondents in Cancun, Mexico, Alexandria, Virginia, and Union Township, New Jersey. You're watching Eagle News America. Please stay with us.
Isa ka sa pinakamagaling na singer sa buong Pilipinas.
Tumaas ulit ng note without even breathing. So doon ako sabi ko, wow.
Kung kami po makakalaban nyo sa singing contest, ay laglag kami lagi.
Nagulat ako sa iyo, grabe ka.
Ang unang pepwesto sa bagong set ng monthly elimination ay walang iba kundi si...
Let's see!
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization, startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
Hello, my name is Robin, and I'm 5 years old. My mom and dad said many people are getting sick. That is why we have to stay at home. That is why I cannot go to school. I cannot play outside, and I cannot even visit my friends. We can only go outside if we visit the doctor, or if we need to buy some food. And when we get home, we have to wash our hands. While I'm at home, I do my homework, clean up my toys, help cooking our food, and help my parents with their work. Please stay home so we can all play together again. Bye!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Philip Toledo, coming to you from Atlanta. Our Texas Bureau Chief, Jane Kathleen Gregorio, who's supposed to be on a romantic anniversary getaway with her husband in Cancun, Mexico, now finds herself with other guests sheltering in their hotel's convention room as Hurricane Delta takes aim at Cancun on the way to the U.S. Gulf Coast. She spoke to the hotel manager and to one of the guests to get their thoughts. Let's take a look.
I'm here today in Cancun, Mexico, where we have just received reports from the National Hurricane Center regarding Hurricane Delta, which has rapidly intensified to a Category 4, with 140 miles per hour winds currently aimed at the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Meanwhile, here in Cancun, many resorts are taking precautions for their guest safety by arranging earlier checkouts and flight changes. And for those not able to leave, furnishing evacuation and hurricane refuge areas. We're here right now in Atelier Hotel Resort. And as you can see behind me, the clouds have started to accumulate. It has been very overcast for the past few hours, and we still have a few tourists struggling. However, all of the guests here in this resort area have been asked to meet in the lobby to be transported to the evacuation center.
Right now, Delta, it is category number 4. It is a really dangerous hurricane, but we have a shelter here, pretty safe shelter here. And the good thing of it is that Delta is going really fast, and probably the winds and then the rain, the hard rain, is going to be only for 3 hours.
Okay, so what will happen tomorrow when the hurricane passes, if everything is okay?
Okay, the next thing to do, once the hurricane goes away from this area, we have to take a look at the hotel and evaluate all the rooms and all the facilities to see if we are able to go back to our places, or if we have to place you in a plane back to your country. And this is a result of a lot of experience, because we've been living in this area with many experiences like this. So I know we are going to be good. We did all in order to be good, and suddenly tomorrow we are going to be laughing at this.
This is the most secure area because there's no windows. So they set this up, and they're doing some barricading so that we basically have a place, and the reason we're all out of the rooms is because the glass will break in some of the rooms. About 160 miles an hour wind, and they found this out in Florida, will put a 2x4 through a piece of plywood. So it actually takes 2 3/4-inch pieces of plywood at a full Category 5 storm or a tornado to keep a 2x4 from going through. I mean, this is a real radical high-speed event, very dangerous. So we're here away from the windows. Hurricane, which has been moving gradually either northwest and now west-northwest, was much closer to Cuba, which is roughly northeast of here. And as we were on the plane, it went from over Cuba to where it was going to threaten Cancun. And that happened while we were flying out of Houston yesterday around 3 o'clock. So we got here, and it's funny, we checked in and we didn't make it down the hall, and the receptionist came running and said, hey, if you can get on the plane and go home, we're going to shut everything down. And that was, I hadn't had a chance to check the news, so that's pretty interesting.
Meanwhile, Hurricane Delta is expected to make landfall in Cancun at 8 a.m. Wednesday en route to the U.S. Gulf Coast, and is one of the biggest hurricanes expected to impact Cancun since Hurricane Wilma 15 years ago. Stay tuned to Eagle News for further updates. In Cancun, Mexico, I'm Jane Kathleen Gregorio, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you in the studios.
Thanks so much, Kathleen, for that report. We hope that you stay safe and that you're still able to enjoy that anniversary trip. We know it's not as expected, but we appreciate your support always. Now we'll turn our attention to the state of Virginia. It's 48 days before the U.S. election this upcoming November, and mailboxes there and post offices have been burglarized, raising concern about mail-in ballots. In Alexandria, Eagle News correspondent E.J. Gonzalez reports. E.J.?
Thanks, Philip. According to the United States Postal Inspection Service, or USPIS, billions of letters and packages are mailed out every year. Early voting has also begun in Virginia, and many are submitting absentee ballots through the mail to cast their poll for the November elections. However, there have been recent instances throughout Richmond and its neighboring cities where mail has been stolen from the blue mail drop boxes outside of the post offices. The type of mail that was being targeted was not confirmed, but with only 1 month left till the national election, there is some concern that Virginians' election mail could be at risk. According to USPIS, the stealing of mail is a federal charge with consequences of up to 5 years in jail for each count of theft, with fines of up to $250,000 US. USPIS reported that if there were ballots that were stolen from these boxes, then they would work with the FBI to assertively investigate in order to prevent any type of election fraud. The vandalized mailboxes outside the post office are currently taped off, with signs urging customers to enter the building to send out their mail. Another method for safer delivery is to send out mail through the workplace or to physically hand outgoing mail to one's local postman. The Department of Elections informed voters that they can check the status of their ballots through vote.elections.virginia.gov/voter information. And in other recent news, Governor Northam took to Twitter to send a video greeting updating his health status in battling COVID-19. He stated that he and First Lady Pam Northam are continuing to make good progress despite the governor developing mild cold-like symptoms and losing his sense of smell. They remain in good spirits, and the governor continues to fulfill his daily work for the Commonwealth from his home. And according to the Virginia Department of Health, the state of Virginia as a whole is doing very well in battling the virus, with the 7-day moving average nearing its lowest mark since mid-June. The percent positivity rate is currently below 5% for the state. We're almost to that 0% mark, but until then, please take this reminder that close is not yet done. Let's continue to do our best in practicing our social distancing, frequent hand washing, and be sure to vote if you have that right to do so. In Alexandria, Virginia, EJ Gonzalez, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, EJ, for that report. It's very concerning news about the post office there.
Yeah.
Have you been there recently? What did it look like?
Yeah, so I go to the post office pretty frequently. The post office seems to be running the same as it has been even before the pandemic. Whenever I've gone to the post office to send out mail, the lines have been pretty normal. Everyone is required to wear masks, of course, inside, and there are around 7 to 10 people in line usually when I go. There are those stickers on the floor, too, to ensure that we're 6 feet apart while we're in line. And then when you get to the register, there's that plexiglass, those sneeze guards between the customer and the worker. So they've definitely made the proper health measures for the post offices. If there are those who are going to mail in their ballots for the election, it shouldn't take more than 15 minutes to get to the front of the line in order to drop off their mail. There are also drop boxes inside some of the post offices that I've been to, and it should be safer to drop off ballots inside rather than the blue boxes outside that have been burglarized recently.
That's a good point, EJ. And I believe in some previous broadcasts you talked about your plans on how you were going to vote. Were you planning to vote by mail?
Yeah, I was. I actually received my absentee ballot just a couple of days ago. I know that there are options to do a drop-off ballot in certain locations. So after this story, I might be switching my plan to do more of that drop-off. It might be a lot safer than to deliver through the mail. But, you know, with the USPS having that recent threats of bankruptcy, I did want to support, you know, the post office. So, you know, hopefully everything goes well and I could still go according to plan. But again, there's still that drop-off option.
Absolutely, and it's an important reminder for everyone. There are multiple options. So if you have the right, as you mentioned, if you have the right to do so, make sure that you register and get out there to vote. Thank you so much for your report tonight, EJ.
Thanks, Philip.
Now, 4 people, sadly, have been killed by a fire in a New Jersey furniture store. In Union Township, Bureau Chief Carlo Valdez reports.
Thanks, Philip. A tragic ending to 3 children and 1 adult in a furniture store fire in Elizabeth, New Jersey. 2 young sisters and their mother and their young friend were out shopping for school supplies when fire from a soda machine broke out on the first floor. The fire then rose to the second floor where the victims were shopping in. Elizabeth Mayor Chris Baldwin said, "The personnel in the store attempted to put it out with a fire extinguisher that did not work. The victims, we believe at this stage, were either trying to make it down the back set of stairs, which are in the rear of the building in order to escape out a back door, but due to intense smoke and heat and fire, they were unable to, and that is where they were found." According to a city spokesperson, they tried to escape through a metal gate, but the gate would not open. Another victim was involved and was taken to a nearby hospital, who is now in critical condition. And as for coronavirus stats and numbers, New Jersey reports of 651 new positive COVID-19 cases, pushing the total to 209,342. Sadly, New Jersey is reporting 9 new COVID-19 deaths, pushing the total to 14,360 lives lost. In Union Township, New Jersey, Carlo Valdez, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, Carlo. Now, when we come back, we'll have updates from our correspondents in Fort Worth, Texas, and Los Angeles, California. We'll be back in just a moment. This is Eagle News America.
Ein sonniger Tag heute hier in Berlin vor dem Bundestag. Ich bin Irene Juliet Arzadon und möchte diese Gelegenheit nutzen, um ein paar Worte mit euch zu teilen. An alle Menschen da draußen. In dieser Zeit lasst uns nicht vergessen, den Menschen zu danken, die ihr Leben für uns opfern. Sei es die Menschen, die im Krankenhaus arbeiten, in den Altenheimen sowie in den Arztpraxen, aber auch an die Menschen, die im Lebensmittelhandel sich befinden. Die Kassierer. Manchmal reicht es aus, um ihnen ein freundliches Lächeln zu geben. Denn die Menschen, die heute am Arbeiten sind, weil sie nicht so wie einige von uns zu Hause bleiben können, die sollten wir wertschätzen. Ihnen sollten wir unseren Dank ausrichten. Darum lasst uns noch mehr zusammenhalten. Sie wertschätzen.
Events happen around us all the time. In our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Pula-pula ng pisngi.
Ano? Kasi nag-blush ako. Sa'yo. Oh! Bola yun ah.
Sobra, yung buhok mo, parang naaamoy ko yung buhok mo.
Magkagalit lahat, Barangay Agila.
Paano? Bakit ganun? Nananakot ka na, maganda ka pa rin.
Ay, nako!
Kumanta, sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
Welcome back, everyone. You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Philip Toledo in Atlanta. In-person classes are back in Fort Worth, Texas. Teachers, students, and staff are taking all the necessary precautions to stay safe from the coronavirus. There in Fort Worth, Lovely Anderson has the details. Lovely?
Thank you, Philip, and howdy again from the Lone Star State. Today, October 6th, marks day 2 of official back-to-school day for in-person school learning for Fort Worth students. Fort Worth ISD laid out new classroom protocols and procedures following CDC guidelines. All students are now required to wear a face mask. Students will participate in health screening upon arrival to the school. Students who do not pass health screenings or exhibit a temperature of 100 degrees Fahrenheit or higher will be referred to the school nurse for parent pickup. Physical distancing will be implemented during in-person instructional settings. Each classroom will have visual reminders of social distancing, refillable alcohol-based hand sanitizer stations, access to disinfectant to sanitize working surfaces, as well as no-touch thermometers for temperature checks. To all the students out there, remember to keep those masks on and social distance. Cowtown residents, the city of Fort Worth reminds its motorists to be careful as children are walking, entering, and exiting school buses and vehicles this back-to-school week. So everyone is encouraged, drivers, kids, and parents alike, to use caution as school reopens for in-person learning. According to MedStar, its crews responded to 19 auto pedestrian crashes for kiddos between the ages of 6 and 18 when schools opened last year between August 14th and September 30th. Please, kids out there, stay safe and be mindful of your surroundings. Also, in other news, residents have more time to respond to the 2020 census. The new census continue for the 2030 sends the national head count schedule. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, mandated by our U.S. Constitution, our nation gets one chance each decade. That's every 10 years to count our population. The U.S. Census counts every resident in the United States. The data collected by the census determines the number of seats each state has in the U.S. House of Representatives, and is also used to distribute billions in federal funds to local communities. Officials urge the importance for residents to take part in the census as it provides critical data that lawmakers, business owners, teachers, and other officials use to provide daily services, products, and support for our community. Every year, billions of dollars in federal funding go to hospitals, fire departments, schools, roads, and other resources, all based on the census data collected 8 days out, to be exact. In the state of Texas, early voting runs from October 13th through October 30th. Please take note that you will be required to show an acceptable form of photo ID to cast your vote at the polls. I encourage you all, my fellow Americans, to exercise your right to vote, regardless of who you are voting for. In Fort Worth, Texas, I'm Lovely Anderson. Eagle News, we live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks so much, Lovely. Now, I'm just curious on the topic of students returning to school. Do you have school-age children yourself? And if so, as a parent, how do you feel about the precautions that they're taking?
I do. I have a 7th grader and an 8th grader, my boys. I'm not letting them do the in-person school learning for right now. I feel more comfortable with the online learning until things get a little bit more better, and I feel more comfortable with them going out there, and all of this gets more situated. But my kids are very well adjusted to the online learning. We have all of the resources we need, so I think we'll be good.
That's good, and I think there's a lot of moms across the country that could really identify with your sentiments there. And I guess my follow-up question, you mentioned that that they're well acquainted with the online learning, but how do they feel, or what's their reaction to staying home versus going back to school in person?
I think they're getting too comfortable with it, because their lunchtime is, every time they're on break, they're running to the refrigerator to get some snacks. So I don't know if this is healthy for them because they're always snacking during classes. So.
Right. Well, I guess you got to stock up on carrots and hummus. Maybe that will help with some of that.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Philip.
All right. Thanks, lovely. Now, a suspect has been arrested for the Los Angeles Sheriff Deputy's ambush shooting in Compton. In Delano, Julian Fiesta has the details.
Thank you, Philip. Suspect arrested for the Los Angeles Sheriff's Deputy's ambush shooting in Compton. Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva updates the public with his announcement that an arrest has been made of a suspect who ambushed and shot at 2 Los Angeles Sheriff's deputies in Compton last month. The shooting, described as ambush style, took place on Saturday, September 12th in the evening. The 2 deputies were sitting in their patrol car near the Metro Blue Line station in Compton. The suspect covertly walked to the opened car window on the passenger side of the patrol car and fired multiple shots, injuring both deputies. The suspect then ran from the scene and into a black sedan. From witnesses and review of the video surveillance, the black sedan was a Mercedes-Benz. It was discovered that over a week prior, on September 1st, there was a carjacking in Compton wherein a black Mercedes-Benz was stolen and the victim was shot in the leg. The suspect for this crime was a black male adult. After a thorough investigation, an arrest warrant was made for Deontay Lee Murray, a 36-year-old resident of Compton. 2 weeks later, on Tuesday, September 15th, the suspect was found and the surveillance apprehension team of the Major Crimes Bureau attempted to apprehend him in his car. The suspect took off in his 2006 Toyota Solara. There was a vehicle pursuit wherein the suspect got rid of his pistol by throwing it out his car window. Law enforcement were able to retrieve this pistol for evidence. The vehicle pursuit ended with the suspect stopping his car to flee on foot. The suspect's photograph will not be shown at this time. The suspect was then found that evening concealed in bushes. He was apprehended for the carjacking and assault with a deadly weapon. Forensic firearms reports showed that the pistol recovered from this crime matched the ballistics of the gun that shot the 2 deputies. It was also found that the pistol in evidence was missing 5 rounds of its 12-round capacity, which accounts for the 5 rounds fired at the 2 deputies during the ambush-style shooting. Due to ongoing investigations and possible photographic lineups to witnesses, the suspect's photograph will not be shown at this time to the public. According to investigators, Murray is the only suspect and acted on his own. The County District Attorney's Office has charged Murray with 2 felony counts of willful, deliberate, and premeditated attempted murder of a peace officer and attempted murder, carjacking, robbery, and assault for the carjacking crime. Murray will receive life in prison if convicted. He is currently on bail at $6,155,000. In Delano, California, Julian Fiesta, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, Julianne. And it's very encouraging to hear that the suspect has been arrested. I'm curious, how has this situation affected LA County and the residents there?
So the community and the nation really came together to show their love and support for the injured deputies and the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department with heartwarming letters, emails, cards, flowers, food, and donations. The initial $100,000 reward for the capture of the suspect from the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors grew to over $600,000 with the outpouring of donations from the public and private sectors. In his tweet, Sheriff Villanueva even thanked President Trump and Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden for reaching out and offering their kind words. Philip?
Thanks so much for that report, Julianne. Hopefully we'll have time to catch up here at the end of the broadcast.
Thank you.
Now, when we come back, we'll have reports from Sacramento, California, and then head back to Uniondale, New York, and business news with Bobby Soriano. Stay with us. This is Eagle News, America.
Bye-bye! 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 Gustong-gusto ko yung fake news. Bakit di nila makukuha yung tamang sagot?
Bawal ang fake news. Bawal mali-mali.
Tonto ako sa fake news, hindi nila makuha yung tamang sagot.
Team Papa Hip Hop Queen!
Ang gusto ko yung PN's the key.
Kasi nakaka-relate din ako dyan. Yung misis ko madalas umorder eh.
Ang red ba? Ang confirm or cancel?
Gusto rin namin magbigay ng pag-asa sa ating kapwa, lalo na sa panahon ngayon.
Ang gusto ko dyan, ayudawan, nakatulong na, nakakatawa pa.
Driver Grab, nag-deliver, driver Grab.
Ang gusto ko po dyan yung ayudawan kasi marami pong natutulungan na tao.
Salamat po. Maraming salamat po. Unang-una po sa ama.
Maraming salamat po. Ikwento ko po ito sa aking mga anak.
Gusto ko sa happy time, maalis tayo. Tonto ako kay KitKat.
Iyan o. Iyan o.
Last Sunday ay umulan ng feel sa ating TNT stage as On-Cue Dance Company secured the victory. Ngayon, we continue the search para sa karapat-dapat na umangkin ng 2 million peso grand prize at ng titulo bilang Tagisan ng Galing's Grand Champion. Abangan sa Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 Dance Edition!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Philip Toledo in Atlanta. Eagle News correspondent Macy Membrere has two stories for us tonight. The California wildfires have now burned a record 4 million acres. And as counties begin to open, Governor Gavin Newsom reminds Californians about safety, guidelines, and responsibility. Macy?
Thank you. Firefighters continue to battle 23 major wildfires across the state of California. This year has been record-breaking when it comes to the total acres burned, especially compared to just 2 years ago when the record was 1.9 million acres burned, which is less than half of the amount of acres already burned this year. Here is Scott McCain from the Cal Fire Information Center with more details on this for this record-breaking wildfire season.
Since the beginning of the year, there have been over 8,300 wildfires that have burned just over 4 million acres. 3.7 million of those burned have occurred after August 15th. The most acres burned prior to this was in 2018, where just over 1.9 million acres burned. To date, the total number of fatalities statewide is 31. And over 8,687 structures have been destroyed. We still have the responding resources from out of state. They're from New Jersey, Montana, Utah, Texas, New Mexico, Washington, and Oregon, bringing with them 157 fire engines. There are also crews from Canada and Mexico. Temperatures will remain warm today across the state, and humidity recovery remains slow, which continues the increased fire danger over the course of today, possibly into tomorrow. Locally gusty winds continue over the next few days on the west edge of the Sacramento Valley, the North and East Bay, and Southern California mountain ranges.
An update on COVID-19 in California. Although positivity rate has decreased overall, the number of those testing positive continues to rise. In the latest press conference with Governor Gavin Newsom, he discusses total tests versus positivity rates over a 7-day period and hospitalization rates over a 14-day period. Let's listen.
7-day average of cases in the state is slightly better than what this slide represents. Remember, the total test versus positivity rate is over a 14-day period on this slide, 2.8% positivity rate over 14-day. The case rate over a 7-day period, slightly better at 2.6%. Our average number of daily tests are starting to increase. This weekend, we had 160,000 tests, 140,000 tests, 130,000 tests the last 3 days. So we're starting to see a growth in the total number of daily tests, the average tests getting back up again, impacted substantially by the wildfires over the course of the last 6 or so weeks. So more tests, positivity rate that's holding steady at 2.6% over 7 days. Here reflected on this slide, 2.8% over 14-day period. The hospitalization numbers, as you can see, continue to trend down, 13% decrease over the last 14 days. That decrease is beginning to plateau a little bit. The rate of decrease is slowing. Not only on hospitalizations, the rate of decrease is slowing as it relates to ICU admissions here in the state, represented by a 15% decrease in admission decline over the last 2 weeks.
In his closing statement, Governor Newsom reminds and cautions Californians to wear a mask, physically distance, wash hands, and minimize mixing, especially as counties and businesses begin to open up again.
It will be the individual actions, the sum total of which will determine our fate and future and how quickly we can modify and reopen our economy until we have an immunization. And so it is absolutely incumbent upon all of us, particularly this vulnerable period of time when more and more counties moving out of purple into red, into orange and yellow tiers, more and more activity, more and more mixing, that we do so in a safe and responsible manner. And so forgive me for the redundancy, forgive me for repeating so often this mandate, or rather our collective mission as it relates to some of the mandates we put out in terms of mask wearing, but it's about protecting you and protecting your loved ones and helping us safely reopen this economy and get our kids back into school.
In Sacramento, California, Macy Membury, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thanks, Macy. Now we'll head back to the Northeast, where Governor Andrew Cuomo outlines a cluster action initiative to address the threat from the New York hotspot zones. In Uniondale, Joanne Andres reports.
Hi, Philip. In today's briefing, Governor Cuomo said New York is doing well but has a cluster problem. The statewide positivity rate excluding hotspots is currently at 1.2%. The 20 hotspot zip codes yielded a 5.5 positivity rate. Governor Cuomo said mass gatherings cause infections, which cause a cluster. A cluster causes community spread. That is the natural evolution of things unless we intervene and stop the cycle. We're seeing clusters now in several areas in the state, and we have to stop the spread before we go backwards on the progress we've made. Cuomo introduced the Cluster Action Initiative, a clear plan to respond to any cluster that threatens the state's progress. The first step is to take dramatic action within the cluster. The second step is to take action in areas surrounding the cluster, and the third step is to take precautionary action in the outlying communities. Through mapping software, areas with a high concentration of cases can be clearly seen. Clusters are relatively small areas measuring 1 mile in diameter. Cuomo released maps of areas with high positivity, including southern Brooklyn, Queens, Rockland and Orange counties, and Binghamton. Each area in the cluster will be met with the appropriate restrictions, categorized either red, orange, or yellow based on the proximity to the cluster. In red zones, these impacted areas require the most intense action. Houses of worship will be at 25% capacity with a maximum of 10 people. Mass gatherings are prohibited. Only essential businesses will be allowed to remain open, and dining is takeout only. Schools will be closed and will be conducted remotely. In orange warning zones, houses of worship will be at 33% capacity with a maximum of 25 people. Mass gatherings will be capped at 10 people, and schools will also be closed with remote learning. Further out in the yellow or precautionary zones, houses of worship will be allowed at 50% capacity. Mass gatherings are permitted for a maximum of 25 people, and businesses will be allowed to remain open. Schools in yellow zones are permitted to remain open, but will require mandatory testing weekly of students and staff for in-person settings. Testing will go into effect by next Friday, as Cuomo is very concerned about exposure in schools. He pointed out that the virus is not coming from non-essential businesses or schools. It may be spread by those means, but this is about mass gatherings, primarily houses of worship, colleges, and some other outdoor venues. All other rules will go into effect as soon as tomorrow, but no later than Friday. Rules will be in effect for a minimum of 14 days. Local governments must enforce the law. Today's update on the numbers: of the 96,000 tested reported yesterday, 1,393 were positive. Total hospitalizations are at 705, and sadly, there were 9 COVID fatalities yesterday. In Uniondale, New York, Joyanne Andrus, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, Joyanne. And so you're there in New York. What do you think about this cluster action initiative?
I mean, this time around, I'm really glad that we know enough about COVID-19 to take the necessary precautions. I won't be surprised if we do end up dealing with a second wave, but I think the best thing to do is stay informed and have a stronger sense of self-awareness in terms of social distancing and any risk of exposure. You know that New York has been a hotspot for a while during this whole pandemic, and I really do think and believe that New York takes pride in our strength. And if we, join together in numbers and doing the necessary things, I believe that we can get over it.
Absolutely. And I'm just curious, for you and your friends there and in your particular community, do they share that same sentiment? Are they ready for this? And I just ask because I know down here in Atlanta, there's a lot of fatigue, if you will, with the pandemic. I went out this weekend to an orchard, and it was just packed with people and not many people wearing masks. So, what's it like up there, especially now with having to put in these additional measures?
Oh, definitely. I feel the same way with you. I went apple picking the other week, actually, as well, and I was stunned. It was around the border of New York and New Jersey, so there was a lot of people there, and it's pretty wild to think that a lot of people are out, but we get really excited with the season changing, and this is the exact same thing that's going to happen. But as long as we are aware of what we're doing and we're taking the necessary precautions of just being respectful of each other's spaces, I believe that we are in the same mindset of things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that report. You stay safe, and I'm sure we'll catch up here in a little bit before the end of the broadcast.
Thank you, Philip. You too.
Now, let's talk about business. In New York, Eagle News reporter Bobby Soriano brings us the latest in the business world. Bobby?
U.S. markets have closed for today. Here are the latest business headlines. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell continued urging U.S. lawmakers to provide fiscal support to a fragile U.S. economy. In remarks to the National Association for Business Economics, Powell stressed that in order for the U.S. economy to maintain its recovery, monetary policy from the Fed would not be enough on its own, and that some form of additional fiscal spending would be needed by the federal government to maintain the economic recovery. Beyond Meat sees big gains today as it announces expansion plans in the UK through a partnership with McDonald's. Beyond Meat share prices rose today on the announcement that McDonald's will be looking to provide plant-based alternatives in its UK restaurants. This is also on top of a recent share price target increase to $173 from $130 by investment bank Piper Sandler, noting a recent survey that teens and young people are showing a preference for plant-based alternative products. U.S. markets turned sharply into the red after a tweet sent out by President Trump indicating that he is suspending stimulus talks until after the November elections. And finally, Instagram celebrates 10 years of selfies, beautiful landscapes, and adorable pet photos on its platform. We take a look at the ups and downs the company has faced as it approaches 1 billion global users. It's become a window to our past, albeit filtered to perfection. Our family vacations, our happiest moments, even just our daily routines, all captured for today's generation to like, comment, or quickly scroll through. This wasn't always a plan for Instagram. Founders Kevin Systrom and Mike Krieger hope to improve on the mobile check-in trend pioneered by apps like Foursquare by adding a photo sharing option that allowed their users to post pictures of locations that they were checking into. But Systrom and Krieger quickly realized that it was the photo sharing ability that made their app so popular to users, and so began Instagram's rise as the dominant photo sharing app in the world. Founded on October 6, 2010, Instagram, with its laser focus on providing a medium where people could post curated, filtered photos of their lives, quickly went viral. Within 2 months, its user base had grown to over 1 million users. By June 2011, 5 million users, and by April 2012, 30 million users. It was at this point that Instagram caught the attention of another social media giant, Facebook. And on April 9, 2012, Facebook purchased Instagram for $1 billion in cash and stock options. Facebook's investment into Instagram has paid off very well for the company, with analysts valuing Instagram well over $100 billion as of 2018. For the most part, Facebook has left Instagram to its own devices. Most users don't even know that Instagram is owned by Facebook. Indeed, Instagram has continued its stellar growth not by the help of Facebook, but ironically from its competitors, as Instagram has slowly integrated many like-minded features from other social media platforms, such as Vine's 15-second video clips, Snapchat's disappearing stories, and now TikTok's short musical sing-alongs. That's not to say Instagram hasn't had its fair share of challenges and controversies. Many users were upset at the company in 2016 for abruptly changing their Instagram timeline from chronological order to an order now determined by an algorithm. Instagram is also not immune to the spread of hate speech and fake news that is plaguing other social media platforms. But while tech CEOs make their case to US lawmakers that their social media platforms are safe for the American people, Instagram's global user base of over 800 million will continue to bring in ad revenue profits because, let's face it, in today's culture, if you didn't Instagram that experience you had today, did it really happen? Reporting from New York, Bobby Soriano, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thanks so much for that report, Bobby. And I don't know about anyone else, but my Instagram feed is either pictures of my son or pictures of food. And one of the food pictures that I've seen all over my feed today has been noodles, because guess what? It's National Noodle Day. So before we go, let's put our Eagle News friends on the spot here in the studio and ask, what is your favorite dish that has noodles in it? EJ, what do you have to say?
Man, there's a lot to choose from. Honestly, I feel like it's hard to pick one of my favorites, right? I like ramen. I love vermicelli noodles, like and pho. But recently, my wife she tried a lot of new dishes, and one of my new favorites is beef stroganoff from scratch. So that one's really good.
And how does it taste?
Up there with all the other noodles.
It's best
really good
thing you've ever tasted because your wife made it, right, EJ?
Of course, of course.
Absolutely. How about Lovely? Had a chance to noodle on this question. What's your favorite dish with noodles in it?
I'm from Japan, so I grew up in Japan, and I'm all about my Japanese noodles. I make yakisoba noodles, so I always have yakisoba noodles and soba noodles in my refrigerator. So if I'm craving some noodles, I'm probably going to make some homemade yakisoba.
Now that sounds pretty fancy. What is it like to make yakisoba noodles?
It's actually really easy. As long as you have the noodles and the packet that you can buy at the Asian store, you just cut up your vegetables, cabbage, some lunch meat, and some carrots, and throw it all in there. It's the best.
That sounds good. I think it's making EJ and I hungry over here. How about let's go to New York. Joyanne, what's your favorite noodle dish?
Hi, I'm gonna have to say that pho. I crave pho a lot. It's not too salty. The bone broth is usually always on point. I love the basil, the bean sprouts, and the fresh squeeze of lime on top. So I'm gonna go with pho tonight.
So let me ask you this, because for those that are into pho, I know there's a lot of debate. Do you add sriracha or chili sauce or anything else to it, or do you just go with the fresh ingredients?
I add the sauce. I add the sauce.
Excellent.
Go all out.
And then just out of curiosity, because I think all of the pho restaurants that I've been to here in Atlanta, they have a similar looking menu. In New York, are they all labeled, P1, P2, P3 with varying degrees of things added in?
Absolutely, Philip.
And everybody's nodding their head, so I guess that's, at least in the States, that's a universal.
Universal language.
Absolutely. Well, I know in Atlanta, I usually go for the P15 because it has the fatty brisket and the meatballs, because I don't know, for some reason those just taste so good. But I'll go with, let's not forget Julian in California. Well, what can you add to our noodle discussion?
So as a recently graduated college student and a horrible cook, I am a big fan of instant noodles, cup of ramen, those easy to make pancit cantons. You just boil the noodles for under 5 minutes, mix everything all together, and it's good to go. Horrible for you, but tastes amazing.
But that's a good point. And when you are not a recently graduated college student, there's still a very high appeal for cheap instant noodles. In fact, that's one of my go-to noodle dishes over the past pandemic has been making, if you've seen the movie Parasite from Korea, there's a very dramatic scene where she's making, they call it, the subtitles say ramdan. I'm not going to try to pronounce it in Korean, but basically you take two different, and we can post the link somewhere else because I don't want to pronounce it, but basically two different types of Korean instant noodles. You mix them all together. Instead of making it a soup, you just put a little bit of water, so that way it makes it like a thicker sauce, and it's spicy, and it's got a little bit of seaweed taste, and it is very good. But I could talk about noodles all night, so before we go, we want to thank everyone for joining us here this evening, but also, as always, we want to thank our healthcare workers, our first responders, essential workers, with a round of applause. So if all of my EBC friends could join me, thank you so much. We sincerely appreciate all that you do. That's it for today's Eagle News America. I'm Philip Toledo. We live in interesting times.
May sakit na lumalaganap, lunas di panahan.